Well, hello. Today I'm going to be reviewing Monster, the Jeffrey Dahmer story. When I saw this, and after the first episode, I realized that it was going to be non-linear, and the first episode was like an hour, and there were like 10 episodes, 9 episodes. So when I saw they were starting from the beginning, I realized that you kind of have to start things. You have to start with a bang in order to bring people in. But at the same time, everyone kind of knows Jeffrey Dahmer's story, and you know, if it's going to be jumping back and forth through time, it's going to be non-linear. I just think like a 10-hour show to where you're going back and forth through time, it just kind of throws me off. And sometimes you don't know exactly like when something happened. I just feel like if something is that long, if it was like 2 hours, 2.5 hours, and you jump back and forth through time, me myself, I'm fine with that. But 10 hours, it kind of takes me out of it because I don't you can't really remember where certain things like happen, you know? Or I don't know if that's just me. But yeah, when I saw that, I was like, oh man, 10 hours. And, we start from the beginning. Then the next episode, it's like he's in school. And then we just jump back and forth like too many times. I just really didn't like that. Um, where do I go from there? Well, I'll give it the TV series praise now. So the TV series, all the actors did a phenomenal job. Evan Peters, the dad, did a really good job. The grandma, almost all the victims. Well, I won't say who I didn't really care for, but they all were really good. I think one of the reasons why this show was so hard for me to get through was because the victims, they were almost all like really like charismatic, and like I guess maybe it was like the actors that they chose. They man, you just like they just you could tell that they were like good people, or at least the actors made it seem like they were like really like nice, like loving people, especially like the deaf guy Tony. Uh, I forgot the guy's name. That his car, he was having car problems, and then he went to Jeffrey's house, and everybody else. They just seemed like they were having a good time. They were good people, and it's like you could see yourself in them. You're out having a good time, and because the show showed like the victim's perspective, I don't know, it just made it like harder for me to watch. Normally, um, in like a show like this, you'll see the victim, like what they were doing earlier that day. You don't know that they're trying to be a model. You know, um, you don't know that their brother had been taken advantage of, and you're an immigrant and your family's struggling. Yeah, you don't get all that, and all the guys were like fairly like young men, 14s. The guy that was going to a concert, I'm gonna assume he was like teens. So yeah, it made it hard because it's like he's trying to turn these guys that are just trying to have a good time into like zombies and crazy stuff like that. Um, but I will say this about Dahmer. Watching the show, and I saw like Watch Mojo, and they said some of the things like weren't true. Watching the show, it seemed like he had like a lot of abandonment issues, and his dad was kind of like coming and going. his mom left him. Uh, you wonder if that's why he, wanted to keep like the people with him, and if that was why he wanted to keep them as zombies, just so they could like stay with him because he was used to like his parents abandoning him. Nowadays that's kind of like more common, like one of your parents not being there, and but back then that wasn't like the case. So he probably had like friends that had their fathers, and mothers that weren't on drugs, so it wasn't so common. So that brings me to, I wonder if the guy that Jeffrey killed, Tony, the deaf guy, I wonder if Tony would have been the first guy that Dahmer kind of put himself out there to. If that first person would have been Tony, and Tony and Dahmer like actually had like a relationship, because keep in mind, we don't really think about this, but in the late 70s, when Dahmer was getting out of high school, all the way till the early 90s, 91 when he got caught, 92 when he got caught. Um, when it wasn't the easiest for gay people. So, he probably had crushes on guys that he went to school with, and they didn't return the love, so he had to suppress a lot of his feelings, and I guess he almost saw himself as a bad guy because who he wanted to love, they could never like love him, and you just wonder if like he was able to love and like be truly who he was, a gay guy, gay in that area, in that point of time. Would he have become who he ended up turning out to be? I don't think he would have been bashing people in the head if he wasn't hiding so much like passion and love. But that's just me. I look at myself and it's like, man, could I imagine like not being really able to like express myself, to hide all my feelings, to love and not be able to say or tell someone that I have a crush on, that I have a crush on them, for fear of like, maybe all my classmates making fun of me. The first guy that he kind of came out to, that guy, he dropped a F bomb on him, you know, and the guy almost wanted to attack him. So, when we look at that, oh man. Yeah, not to make excuses. It's not acceptable what he did, but when you can't be who you really are, and who you really are is like bad or seen as bad, even though he's technically not doing anything wrong, he's just gay. Um, what does that? What are the results of not being able to be who you are for so long? And then he like refined a lot of his bad behavior, his evil, like over time. But I just wonder, like before he killed the first guy, and then was able to like do whatever he wanted to with that person, and like express his, love, sick love nonetheless. But he was able to like express love onto the guy. I'm pretty sure he like raped him and stuff after he killed him, or kept his body around and just for uh, to be comfortable or to have someone with. Yeah, I found that like really intriguing. And in the year 2022, we don't have as much, you don't have to suppress who you are as much anymore. I wonder, like, are there as many Jeffrey Dahmers out in like the world now? You get what I'm saying? Like, when you're able to be who you are, are you less likely to go down this dark path? Or because you can actually like love and express love and not be hated for your love, can you, I mean, does that create less like Dahmers or John Wayne Gacy's? And when we look at, and speaking of John Wayne Gacy, after I watched Dahmer, because the last episode it started out with John Wayne Gacy, and it kind of made me think, like, is John Wayne Gacy kind of like who inspired Stephen King to make It? Because it's like at certain points in time, John Wayne Gacy kind of had to take time off. He went to jail and stuff, and he dressed up as a clown. He was going after like young men. It seemed like he really liked like the fear aspect of you know taking advantage of these young men. I wonder if he's like somewhat like the inspiration of It. I think all the boys that he killed, they were like all teenagers. I'm, uh, I'm kind of curious about that. I'm going to look it up after this. Another thing that I took away from this show was like mental health. When Dahmer went to prison, his father wrote the judge a letter, and he wanted his son to uh, like see like a psychologist and get like actual like help while he's locked away. He didn't get that help, and the father, like right when Dahmer got out of jail, he asked him like, "Did anyone help you? Did you see like a psychologist or something like that?" Jeffrey was like, "No, I just did my time. I was alone a lot," and the father was devastated. I wonder if he would have got help at that point in time in prison, if his life would have been different, if he was able to like see that he had problems with like abandonment, if he was able to see like it was okay for him to uh, be gay all those years when he was a small kid, if he was able to see um, you know what life is like really about, and if he was able to, because he lied a lot to his father. There was a scene to where the dad, he was really upset, and he was like saying like he believed like it was his fault that his son was that way. And they kind of like showed all the lies. Like every time Jeffrey got in trouble, his dad would talk to him, and every time it was like he'd be saying like everybody's out to get him and all this stuff. He wouldn't face his reality that he'd become a predator, and he he'd basically become a predator, and he was getting caught. So because he couldn't face that, he just kept getting worse and worse. The dad said that he was uncomfortable with talking about, what was going on with the son. So he blamed himself. With that being said, I don't know if it's how Netflix set it up or like how Netflix did this show, but I really struggled with not believing that the father and the grandmother didn't know what Jeffrey was doing. Um, it's just kind of hard to believe that you could live with someone and you smell what they would smell, and like he wouldn't be in the house. And I know he had like his things like locked up, blocked away, but they live in the house. You would get curious what that smell was, and you would want to find out like where it was coming from, and especially with Jeffrey being so weird, I just don't really believe that they wouldn't have investigated, especially it being in their house and him masturbating at fairs, him molesting kids and stuff like that. You would just be too curious. I just can't believe that they wouldn't know. And then the grandma, I believe that she knew that he drugged multiple guys, and that's why she wanted to stay with the final guy. Um, and I don't know, maybe it was just the way Netflix did it, but it's just hard for me to believe after seeing that they did that the dad and the grandmother didn't know. It's really hard to believe that they didn't. But I saw a video on YouTube, and it said that the father didn't really dissect animals and do like taxidermy and stuff like that with his son. So, maybe Netflix got that wrong or wanted to like make that like an excuse of why he was the way he was. So, with that being said, I don't want to. That's how I feel watching the show, but I don't know if since that wasn't like all the things that were like real life, I don't want to say that they knew. So, uh, some of the things I learned from watching this show was, you got to really watch your drinks when you go anywhere. Jeffrey Dahmer, he would like crush sleeping pills like at the bar, just crazy shit. Uh, I just couldn't imagine like working at a bar and a guy crushing a. I mean, how could at all the bartenders, barbacks, servers and stuff, managers at a bar, like nobody's seen this guy crushing fucking pills and dropping it in people's drink at the club. I mean, really? Uh, really to watch out for red flags too. One of the guys went to Dahmer's house and he saw this like book on Satanism. He saw like a drill. Um, the smell should have alerted a lot of the guys. Uh, so people out there, be safe whenever you're seeing red flags. You have to act accordingly. Get the fuck out. And probably the main thing that I took away from this. Well, another one of the main. There's a few more. Uh, it's not bad having like neighbors that are like a community, because if more people would have listened to the neighbor, and I saw a video, it said that the oh man, I forgot her name, but the neighbor in the show, the one he tried to give a sandwich to, it said that she wasn't like his like next door neighbor. She lived like kind of far away from him, but she was, stayed on his butt because just the smell and everything. Uh, yeah, so it's not bad having kind of nosy neighbors. It could actually save lives. I mean, I just wonder like how many people could have lived if more of the neighbors would have been like the lady, or if the cops would have listened to the neighbor from the show. Another thing is Tony. He really got to know Dahmer before he went to his house. Based on what I saw on the show, I mean, it might not have went like that, but they developed a bond, and Dahmer didn't seem like he was like as eager to kill him. He didn't drug him, supposedly, or allegedly. He stayed the night with the guy, and when the guy was ready to leave in the morning to go to work, I guess Dahmer just thought they were just gonna spend the day in bed. That's when Dahmer kind of, got kind of aggressive or wanted to be aggressive with him. But it kind of just goes to show if you get to know someone more, even if it's like Jeffrey Dahmer, before you go to stay the night with them or what have you, they're less likely to want to take advantage of you, and you can see more red flags if you know the right questions to ask. So get to know people, folks. Um, I know as time has gone on, we've kind of developed into a hookup culture, but in hookup culture, are you ever really going to find love? And the dangers of hookup culture are really shown in this show. So that's another thing that I took. This show had a lot of really intense scenes, which I really liked. The sandwich scene was one of my favorites. I was like, please, God, don't let her eat the sandwich. I mean, you could kind of tell from her character she wasn't going to do it, but um, I was just so worried about her and that damn sandwich. He said it was pulled pork, and they say pork is like the closest thing to human uh, flesh meat. So I was like, oh my God, please don't let her eat that. If that really happened, I hope she didn't really let him into her house. That's crazy to think of, especially if she could, like, I know she wasn't his direct neighbor in the actual, like, I mean, in actual reality, but in the show, she was right next to him, and supposedly she could hear everything that was going on in his apartment. She said she heard, like, screams and stuff, and then the smell. So, yeah. And the first episode, we saw the last victim. So it was kind of like, we saw the first one last. And, man, that guy, you feel bad for him, but that was really tense, scary. We saw all the red flags the guy was seeing, and you're like, man, get out of there. And Jeffrey had him like dancing for him, and I believe they were watching like The Exorcist, and Jeffrey, I think he had on like these yellow contacts, really like playing like the villain role. So it was pretty tense. Another really tense scene was Jeffrey wanted to leave in the morning. The kid that should have survived, if you know about this case, you know that the young, I think he was what, 14? He didn't make it. Jeffrey was able to somehow convince the cops that a 14-year-old was 19. I mean, you kind of know a 14-year-old when you see one, you know. Uh, and he wasn't like one of those 14-year-olds to where you look like you're like 30 and you're 14. I was one of those that looked like I was 40 when I was 13. But from the pictures that I've seen, he looked like he was a small child. So it just sucked that he wasn't able to make it out, and the cops failed him. Another thing that kind of sucked was like the family was going to sue the city, and originally it was going to be like $10 million, and it only ended up being 800,000. That kind of hurt me because it was like these people, they're struggling, they lose two kids, and I mean $800,000, that would have been a lot of money back then. But you just want them to not have to go to work. The younger brother, he went and hung out with Jeffrey Dahmer because he said his family needed money, and you just kind of hate to see like someone having to do things like that, like hang out with a stranger for $50 just because they need some money. So, and at the same time, I mean, he was 14. He could have went around and like delivered newspapers or something like that. But yeah, maybe school and everything. I don't know. I probably shouldn't even have said the thing about newspapers. But yeah, so very intense scenes. The last episode, when Jeffrey's killed by the really religious guy, he said his God was a God of vengeance. Uh, I don't know. I don't think Jeffrey really cared if he lived or if he died, but he had just gotten saved. So, maybe he could have been like a voice to people, almost like there was a gang member, Arnold Schwarzenegger had him executed. A lot of people didn't want uh, Arnold to have the guy executed. I think his name was Stanley Tucci or something like that. This was in the early 2000s. Anyway, he started to write books about, from what I can remember, like not being in gangs and stuff like that. And that's why a lot of people wanted him to um, not be executed because he was shining a light on something that a lot of people just didn't realize. Well, a lot of like youths wouldn't realize like how bad it was until it was too late. So because he was living the too late, he wrote these books. And maybe Jeffrey Dahmer could have done something like that. You never know. He had gotten saved. He become more mature. He was honest about what happened. They said that John Wayne Gacy, he still wouldn't like admit to what he did and everything, but at least Dahmer was honest. So maybe he could have grew into something more than what he was. I don't know. You just like to think like with all humans, there is a way they could be like saved and like grow and turn into something better than a damn monster. But yeah, and when the guy kills him, you wonder like, did Dahmer want to die? Because it's like he said that he wanted to. He said he wanted to be executed. So that just kind of made me curious. What else? On a different note, I know that was all. That was like what 30 minutes of deep stuff. Dahmer, he wore the same glasses since like he was in high school, which was like the late 70s. He wore the same glasses from the late 70s all the way until he died in like 1994. So he wore those glasses from like I think the first time they showed him and he was wearing those glasses, from what I can remember, it was like 1978, or so he might have got them like a couple of months before that. And then he wore those glasses when he died in 1994. So I don't know where he got those glasses from. Most of the time, I can keep glasses for like 2, 3 years. For Dahmer to keep them for like 30 years, damn near, that was a hell of a pair of glasses. Yeah, I gotta find something like that. What else can I say about the show? Uh, yeah, just at first I wasn't gonna review it because I don't know. Sometimes it's like it's. I've seen so many like Dahmer movies. What I've seen like three, possibly four. There was one not too long ago on Netflix, and it's really like the same information, like recycled, and to an extent, it's like a cash grab. But the reason why I wanted to review this was because it was actually, you could see more of like the victim's perspective, and it made it harder to watch because you started to like the characters, but at the same time, their story should have been told as opposed to just you know the monster. You want to see what the good people, with the regular people who just happen to come across this sick guy. You want to see like what their story was too, and I really liked how they did that. I hope Netflix could do like a John Wayne Gacy, or they did a Ted Bundy movie not too long ago. I'd like to see a better version of that, to be honest, more similar to this. I watched a lot of the Ted Bundy one, and it was just like all the stuff that we had already known. I'd like to see it in like the format of this, to where we see what happened to the victims' families, uh, some of the red flags. Yeah, and John Wayne Gacy, I'd like to see that. Um, I know and I feel like his would be like really good because the guy was like a real like monster. He seemed like one of the more like evil killers. And then some of the other ones, BT, what is that? Bound, Torture, Kill guy. The Samuel Little, the guy that killed so many people. Uh, I'd like to see a Night Stalker show on this. Speaking of the Night Stalker, Richard Ramirez, he had these shoes. I saw this on the Netflix show that really only he had in Los Angeles. And he'd be out at night and committing his crimes. And I feel like if they would have released the evidence, I mean, the information that he had, he was the only person that wore the specific shoes to the public. The public would have did almost what they did only earlier. Like some guy recognized him, and then a bunch of people basically like turned into like a mob and went after him. I feel like if they would have released that evidence, somebody would have been like, "Oh, I recognize those shoes. It's this guy over here. Let's get him." But it is what it is. The failure of the police, and this, and in the Night Stalker show on Netflix. You know, people are people. It's not like the police are like gods, to where they can be everywhere and see everything. But it's like, come on, guys. If you go to you get called, these women are really concerned. They don't want you to like let the boy go. They're really like concerned. It's like, come on, follow through. Get the ID. I mean, I know that was like a long time ago, but it just sucks that somebody that young had to get tortured to death because someone failed to, well, a couple of guys failed to do their job. You know. What else can I say? It was just a really good show. I think I'm gonna end it there. Thanks for watching. I appreciate the support. Over and out.